So J Nui, where did the sort of initial passion for music and then obviously in particular hip hop and rap come from?
I suppose, as a kid, yeah, listening to it on the radio, I guess. I remember the first song I heard was Missing You by P. Diddy, which was actually the sort of, I guess, like eulogy type song for Biggie Smalls. And
Okay. Yep.
yeah, I think I remember hearing that in the car with my brother, and we really liked the song, but that was because of the Phil Collins sample, I think. But yeah, and then eventually we found out who it was about, and we started listening to Biggie Smalls from then on, and that's the first memory I can think of actually, yeah, being introduced to hip hop. Um, Yeah, and then from there, as a fan, I guess every artist always starts off as a fan first, and you end up knowing what you like, what you don't like, the styles that you really like, or the songs that really stick with you, and yeah, and then eventually I just tried to figure out how I can do that myself, and then that started thanks to LimeWire. I was able to get my hands on the very early FL Studio version. I can't remember what version, but it was really, really early, just on a small laptop, the small family laptop actually, and yeah, so started making music from that. But it was just beats at first because being a teenager, you can't even afford, $100 mic is a big entry point to get over as a teenager. So yeah, I started off that way, just making beats on probably a newly infected laptop, thanks to LimeWire.
Do you think that's sort of where the benefit now these days is like everyone has a phone now, you can just record on that. If you're sort of beginning, you want to just do some vocals, you can just record on your phone and then put that on the computer.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so accessible now. I think even I had a go with I think GarageBand on the phone, just during a flight or something. Um, yeah, like it's so easy now, which I think is good and bad. But yeah, it's so accessible now. I remember, yeah, I tried making like a beat on the phone on a flight because Damon Albarn and Um, yeah, no, I think it was Damon, the guy who created Gorillas.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, the main guy who also has he had like a side project, and he made everything just using a door on the iPad during in between flights when he was touring a few
Yep.
years ago. Yeah, and I remember listening to that, and although there wasn't any high detailed VSTs and synth sounds and stuff like that. He just used all the stock stuff. It was kind of interesting to listen to because you can hear the creativity coming through without necessarily all the shiny glitz and glam of all really nice sounding instruments.
Yeah, it
So
showed that it's
yeah,
just possible with anything now.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
And when did you first like get that idea of, hey, the stuff I'm making is actually good and I could potentially make this a career?
I think in terms of knowing when it was good, I'm sure for a good few years it wasn't. And I guess all artists go through this. You're always sort of throwing it up and seeing whether it's going to stick or not. And sometimes you just go in there with a big bat, just swinging, hoping to hit. But obviously over time, yeah, the more you do it, the more you get refined in how you make it. But I think it was probably mates. Yeah, it's definitely mates at first. I think like with most artists, it'll be mates who you usually share most of the time similar interest in music with, and you all know what you like. At the end of the day, it's still subjective, but once you start getting some good feedback from some mates, then then you start thinking that, yeah, okay, I must be able. This is something that I'm capable of. Um, yeah, because I'm sure, like most artists, you get stuck in your head with the doubt, thinking about, is this good? Is this not good? And then you get fatigue, noise fatigue. You listen to something so long that you no longer know. I'm like, is this loud? Is this quiet? Is this? You lose your reference point. So I think through mates who were honest, that's when I found that it was yeah, that it was something that I was capable of. And in terms of making it a career, I guess that's even more of a yeah, that's yeah, definitely a more difficult thing to establish, I guess, because I have been doing it for consistently for years. It's definitely yeah, it's definitely not my main source of income. I'm sure that's true for most artists, but just in terms of being able to find a balance between working and other life admin stuff and being able to do music, yeah, it did take a while, but I think now, yeah, it's become a good balance. Like planning out releases and just having to be more organized when you do it. I suppose like when I was younger, you were able to just especially studying, is when I was studying, you've got a lot of free time and you need a lot of things to procrastinate with, and music is a perfect outlet for that. But I
Yeah,
suppose you're now, working full time in a very non-music related, yeah, job. It just comes down to like organizing, yeah, making a career out of it, so to speak. But yeah, I do perform quite a lot. That's probably the best. That's when all the creation and all the back end stuff that you spend a few days and weeks preparing. But when you get on stage and you've rehearsed and you feel confident, that's really the most rewarding thing for me, for sure. And we've been really blessed in Queensland that we've been able to, I've been able to perform multiple times this year, and only one of those times was a sit down because of restrictions. So,
wow. That's,
yeah, really blessed to have that. So, yeah.
do you think that's sort of the biggest challenge a lot of people face in terms of like taking a passion and turning it into a career and like realizing that, hey, I need to be focused really professionally and plan all of this out, not just, hey, I want to make this and this is what I'm feeling at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it's more so for creatively led passions, because the like being creative is almost, you have to remove any sort of organization sometimes, just to be able to let the creativity flow through. You can't, like, if you just did sort of a stepwise instructional followed a stepwise instructional video on how to make a song, the song probably wouldn't be very good. So yeah, it's definitely like a juxtaposition. You have the creative side, which is almost like chaotic in a way, like it needs to be in a way to you know um, yeah, truly mix it up and get creative. But in terms of having it all organized and stuff, if you, especially because most of us aren't in a point to have a manager, then yeah, you need to really balance the orderly with the chaotic, I feel. Yeah, especially if you're going to have a business that's creative like music.
And does the Brisbane scene have a sort of lively hip hop community that you can lean on for advice and get some sort of feedback on what you're making?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's definitely not as big as Sydney and Melbourne that I know of when I was there and experienced them before COVID. But there definitely is. It is much smaller, but there's some great groups and great events that are held. Um, a few of them have probably been postponed or pushed back or just rescheduled. But yeah, there's a lot of good outlets. One of them would be there's a show on the local radio station 4ZZZ um, on Thursday nights, and they're really good. Every single week they'll bring in a new artist, and the show's hip hop based. and that yeah, that's actually it's grown quite a lot in the last few years since I followed it for probably like more than 6 years ago now, I think. And with their online presence and their branding, they've really been able to grow. So I think that's probably the in terms of having a local reference point for a hip hop community and for stuff that you can lean on. I would definitely say it's that show because even through that show, um, you found out other smaller artists that are local, and you end up following them or you might message them or whatever. So I've definitely made connections through that. So yeah, I'd say it definitely does exist here in Brisbane.
And then earlier this year, you released the single "Hope." Can you sort of tell me a bit more about the idea and story behind that song?
Yeah, definitely. Hope was about lockdowns and I guess the whole COVID scenario in general, saying even though it seems quite grim and doesn't seem like there's an end to it, if you have any sort of uh, glimmer of hope, then you can hold on to that positivity and that can carry you through. Uh, yeah, I guess it's about being positively oriented about future goals. So that was inspired by, and at the time, Brisbane was going through a lockdown. It was only 7 days, compared to Sydney and Melbourne. It's not much. So I could only imagine, yeah, how it would have felt if you were in Sydney or Melbourne. Because yeah, I was feeling like I needed to express this sort of need to shit because the song is way different to what I usually make, where I'm almost like shouting out over the track more than rapping or even singing, which is not a strong point of mine. I'm almost just like shouting out. I sort of channeled being like a sermon, sort of shouting out at people to have hope and knowing that yeah, the good days will come eventually.
Do you feel that track has sort of continued to gain momentum as the years gone on with the longer lockdowns in Sydney and Melbourne?
Yeah, I think so because it got picked up quite a bit in terms of being playlisted by listeners. Um, I only ever do a bunch of a bunch of Facebook ads for each release, but they're not very big budgets. They're just sort of small pushes to push the song out to people in Australia, New Zealand, and America who probably haven't heard of my music. But that one definitely got playlisted by listeners, just casual listeners, way more than any song in the same time period of the sort of campaigns that I've run, and it has been sustained. So yeah, it does seem like it's performed better than other songs, and it could be because yeah, the nature of the song, it's definitely more upbeat and it's positive. So I can definitely see why that's playlisted more than a few of my other songs, which are way darker or probably more yeah, more heavy hip hop, uh, and probably a bit more uneasy on the ears.
Is this an indication of sort of the future direction of your music?
uh, Back then I would have said yes, but now I would say no. That was more like an outlier of a track. Um, and I think it stems from me being a producer first. I learned how to produce but way before I ever, even rapped into a microphone. So I think that almost limits me in a way because every single time I'm producing, I like to go out of the box and I like to try something else, which is what Hope was. And I also listen to so many different genres of music as well. That yeah, it's not just hip hop. So I'm drawing influences all the time from different genres, and a consequence of that would be I end up making something that's 100% not hip hop based because I'm better at producing. So I like to expand and try new things in terms of production. But in terms of where I am as an artist, I think I need to stick to a certain lane and push it and really develop the foundations of my brain before I end up, going off the wall and doing something out of the box. Um, yeah, it's almost similar to I guess any artist if you really listen to them and you listen to their first albums, they're always stuck to a sound, and then eventually once their audience understands them as an artist, then they'll better understand when they go off what they usually make and experiment. Whereas I think if you're a relatively unknown artist and you start making all this different kind of stuff, then an audience is never crystallized because they're unsure of who you are and where you're coming from based on having a sound that's this and then having a sound that's that. That's just what I feel. So I would say no, it's not an indication of where my sound is going.
Would you say that's sort of the biggest tip for upcoming musicians as well? Like find a spot first before you try and do all crazy different things?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think so. I never believed that, but I think it, just spending so many years doing this, I think it definitely is something that you need to do. Is yeah, establish your sound and your voice and yourself as an artist in terms of branding or what what the outward facing expression of you as an artist is. If you keep it as simple as possible and as consistent as possible, then an audience will get to understand you much quicker and more people will be able to understand you, and then eventually you're able to experiment and go out the box and make something that's pushing the boundaries of your sort of sound demographic, I guess. But I can also see as well how it could be playing into sort of the hive mind in a way. You because you obviously like we're all not doing this just because we want to get heaps of fans and blah blah and all that good stuff, because that would be good, but what you need to do is marry that up with being true to yourself. I so I can see why people would be like, why would I just try and stick to one sound and or stick to a sound that's popular at the moment just to get fans and then go off the rails when, if I make a different song every time, that's true to me. So who are you to say that I shouldn't do that? So I would stick with that. I would trying to find your own sound first that's consistent. But yeah, I can understand why people would not want to be limited creatively.
And you mentioned sort of having a number of different influences. Who would you say have been your biggest influences?
I would say in terms of my entire music experience, the biggest ones would be uh, hip hop producers like DJ Premier, No ID, and Kanye West. Those are who I'd probably say are the three most influential on myself as an artist in whole. But yeah, when it comes to short term, like who I'm listening to now and stuff, that could change all the time. But the ones that I can always go back to would be those three.
What did you think of Kanye's latest release?
Yeah, I loved it. I really loved it. I went into it almost wanting to hate it. Probably like most people, I really wanted to not like it because he can, he can be real stupid at times. He's not the most stable person, but like in his personal life. But if you do that thing where you separate the art from the person, then yeah, I really really enjoyed it, and I'm not any way religious or anything, and um, yeah, it's just something about it. He's just found this really unique point. Um, yeah, in terms of the gospel based music that he made on that. I really really enjoyed the album. There's so many tracks on that I love, and yeah, and there was a whole thing of people comparing it to Certified Lover Boy by Drake and their whole feud that was going on. Um, and you can listen to both, but I think when it comes to, if you just focus on the production, then Kanye West, yeah, it's just, it's a really amazing album. I think I was actually listening to it this morning when I was getting ready. I haven't listened to it for a while, but I really enjoyed it. But I do have a lot of mates as well that just absolutely despise Kanye West because of his antics and all these things that he said. So and I completely, I can completely understand why people would not even bother to even want to listen to the album based on that. So yeah, I understand, but I've been with him since graduation back in high school. So it's kind of been a, yeah, as a fan, you kind of feel like you've been on the journey with him. Um, I jumped off probably after Dark, Beautiful, Twisted Fantasy, the Bipolar album, and the Kids EOS. I didn't really get into, but then yeah, these last few albums I've jumped back on board, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, it can be a bit divisive at times, but I think, yeah, like you said, if you can separate the artist from the art, then it's always really quality stuff. Do you have any imminent releases that people should be looking out for in the near future?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So the 14th of October, I'm releasing my next single, which is called Built Different. And that definitely goes back to the more traditional hip hop roots. That song, it's also about, I guess it's similar to Hope in a way. It's about how every single one of us has our own certain cultural history or present culture that we identify with, and it's the thing that makes us different from one another, but it's also what connects us. And through these unique cultural histories that every single person has, I feel like that's something that we can each use as individuals as a strength to overcome some form of adversity. That's what the track is about. Um, and I guess it's a loose homage to my Maori ancestry as well. But it's more about realizing that every single person has, yeah, their own unique story, their own narrative, their own trials that they're going through. But yeah, the thing that makes you different than everyone else is what I believe is everyone's strength. And yeah, so that's October 14th that comes out.
Okay, that sounds like a really great sort of message to have in a song, especially at this point in
Yeah,
time where everyone's struggling with certain things.
yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And it's interesting because every time I've uploaded the last few songs, I think the first two songs I released were explicit, and these songs that when I've uploaded, there's a little checkbox, is this explicit, this song, and the last few haven't been explicit. I haven't sworn in them, and even the next songs that I was recording last night, that I'm setting up for next year, I also went through the lyrics, and I'm not swearing in them as well. Which I guess it's not a conscious thing that I do, but it was just interesting to know. But I think it does come back from maybe a conversation that I watched about stand-up comics, and I think Jerry Seinfeld was just never swore, but he didn't really have a reason why. I guess he thought that just swearing made it feel cheap and stuff, which is not the reason why I don't do it. It was just, yeah, it was just something that I noticed, and it could be because, yeah, maybe the message is positive, and I don't want to taint it with you know just start effing and jeffing all over the track
Yep.
and stuff. Yeah, try and add a bit of difference in there, especially with hip hop as well. Because if you can do that in hip hop and not actually swear, no one even notices anyway. Like no one ever notices. Oh, there was no swearing in that track. But yeah. So it could be related to the positive message. Yeah.
And then, so where would be the best place for people to follow your journey and see that song as soon as it drops?
Best place. I cross post along all the social media avenues. My handle's the same across all avenues. The Yeah Nah God on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Um, but also, if you follow my artist page on any streaming service, then it'll come out at the same time on all streaming services. If you follow J Nui on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, it'll all drop there. And I like to go across them and update my status on Deezer every now and then. Even though I know there's a lot of users in France, I think that's might be where it's based. It's I like to try and keep it consistent across all of them. So if I post on Twitter, I'm going to post on Instagram as well. It's becoming less and less of an important thing. I would say Instagram was the first, what was like the one that I used the most, but now I'm trying to be consistent across them all. So any social medias or any streaming service, then yeah, you'll be likely to be the first ones to hear it.
It's especially important this morning, knowing that we need to be across everything with two of the majors going down.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 6 hours out. That's yeah. It's hurting. Yeah, it would have hurt a lot of people running ads. I know that for sure. Yeah, but it also makes you realize how I guess how fragile it can be if you just rely completely on Instagram or Facebook to do it. Especially when I release songs, I try and think of other ways. I'm like, okay, if Facebook ads didn't exist, how else would I promote the song? Because yeah, I'm always trying to think of different ways, and it is helpful to think of just back to the more traditional ways of doing things. Where if Facebook ads didn't exist, then how would you find new listeners? You know, yeah. So it's an important thing to remember.
Alrighty, that's all I'll need. Thank you for your time and good luck with the releases. And hopefully, we're back to some sort of normalcy across the country very soon.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I appreciate that, Jamie. Thanks so much as well.